Welcome to the Soul Deep Podcast with Jessica Janty. Join me as we dive deep into raw, real, in-depth conversations about life, love, relationships, sexuality, spirituality, what it is we're really here for, and anything in between. I want this to feel like a safe space for anyone on a spiritual journey, trying to find answers in your truth by having open heart and open-minded conversations. And my hope for you as a listener is that you feel this is a safe space here, a place to hear things from a different perspective that may challenge you and your thinking in the best way possible, allowing you to give grace to how you've been raised or what you've been taught or told to believe. And perhaps you find your truth as I search for mine on this journey we call life. So grab your favorite drink, cozy on up to your couch or wherever you listen from, and join me for these soul deep conversations. All right, welcome back to the podcast. Today I have Gigi with me here. Gigi, thank you so much for being here on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Before we get too far, I'd love to open up with a little bit of breath just to ground us into our space here. So if you're comfortable closing down your eyes, for those of you at home, if you're comfortable, go ahead and close down your eyes just to go inward. We're just going to start with taking some breaths in through our nose and out through our mouth. And just continuing that cycle of breath, that inhale and exhale. Just allowing yourself to let go of anything from earlier today, letting go of anything that you have to do after this, just to allow yourself to be here in this space at this time. Our presence is something that is truly a gift, our gift of time, and also this gift to ourselves of just taking this power of the pause that I love to call it, where we just take some moments to be with our breath, to be with our body. This is really good for you to do at home at any time, or if you're in, the pickup line to pick up your kids and you have just a couple minutes, or before you go into the grocery store, just taking a minute or two and just being with your breath, feeling into your body, letting your body tell you what it needs. We're so often so busy, we're doing all the things that we don't take time to listen to our body. So even just a couple minutes a day, just to be with our breath, be with our body, learn who we are at our core. So we'll take a couple more breaths here. One more big, deep inhale together. And a big audible exhale if you feel like you'd like that. And then just coming back here to the space whenever you're ready. Thank you for joining me in that. I love to start any call, any session, anything with just some breath to ground us in, because I feel like that helps you, especially when you come into a session or into something new. Sometimes we come in with this like crazy chaotic energy. And so if we can just ground ourselves for a minute or so, it's really, really beautiful. So thank you for joining me in that. I saw that you were drinking something in your cup here. So what are you drinking today?
Yes. So I'm a very big herbal tea fanatic, and I just got this Ticino brand tea from my Thrive order. It's Shaga with ashwagandha, and it's a butterscotch cream organic flavor. It says here on the label prebiotic, acid-free, caffeine-free, gluten-free. So all the things free. So I really enjoy using like herbal plants to help with different phases of my cycle. And right now I'm entering my luteal phase. So this is a really good ashwagandha is really, really good adaptogen that helps to calm the nervous system, helps to ease the go, go, go and the brain patterns. Yeah, that's what I'm drinking today.
I love that. It sounds so good and
Mm.
cozy. Like butterscotch cream sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's really, oh, it's so tasty. It tastes like a dessert, really.
Yeah. And I love a good warm drink in the morning. I am, even in the summertime, I know it's silly because it's warmer, but I just love a good hot cup of something in the morning. It just, yeah,
Yeah.
it's my favorite. So I'm drinking my Dandy Blend. I drink Dandy Blend almost every day. And I just put a little bit of a dairy-free creamer in it, and then a little bit of cinnamon, and then some little bit of sea salt because I just, for myself, I have POTS, and so I need to have a little extra salt in my system. So it's a really great way for me to start my day. So, well, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us who you are.
Yeah. So I am a registered nurse by trade. I have been practicing nursing for about almost over a decade at this point, maybe almost 15 years or so. I love everything holistic. I have two kids. I'm a registered nurse, like I said. I am an intuitive flow educator, which means I help people live a more cyclical lifestyle and be more in tune with their cycles. Because to me, it's so important for us to understand that when we align with our natural cycles, we feel more balanced, we feel more energized, we feel more in control because it's not a constant war with ourselves. I have two children, ages 6 and 7, and I homeschool them. My husband and I own our own RV repair business as well. So we're pretty busy. We're pretty busy.
Wow, that is a lot. Okay, so you're still practicing as a nurse, correct? Or no?
Correct. So I actually have kind of evolved into health coaching, like online coaching. And that shift happened about last a year ago. I I attended a Tony Robbins event. I
Hmm.
feel like a lot of crazy stuff always is like, well, I attended a Tony Robbins event. And then I realized that I was not living in my full potential. So I decided to quit my 9 to 5 corporate nursing job because it just was not aligning with my values as a holistic practitioner. And it was a really hard decision because I was mainly the sole breadwinner of my family. But I knew that I wanted to help people on a grander scale, on a deeper level, and sustainably. So that sparked me like diving into my health coaching business like all in because I feel like that's where my passion lies.
I love that. We have a very similar story because I don't know if you know my backstory is actually I'm a nurse also, been for 20 years. And I left my traditional Western medicine job, I say, 3 years ago because it just didn't feel aligned anymore as well. And I just wanted something deeper, but I didn't even know about coaching. I didn't know about any of that before I left the hospital. So I love to hear your story as well. And I know sometimes when we get into that and when people are feeling stuck, it's not that you have to leave your job because sometimes people are like, well, I feel like you push just to like leave, leave Western medicine. And that's not what I'm doing at all. When I have these talks and I highlight that people have done it as well. But what I want to highlight is that you chased your passion, that you're like, I know that I'm meant for something more than this or something a little bit deeper than I'm doing. And then you really pursued that passion. So that's what I think is so beautiful. So congratulations on that. Because it is hard,
Thank you. And
especially when we talk
it
about it so
is.
fluffy. Like when we just bypass it, it's like, oh, we just did this. But it's one of the hardest decisions for me. I don't know about you.
It took me many years to make that decision. It wasn't like it was something that was brewing on the back of my mind. And then when everything happened with COVID and the way, because I worked for a very big pharmaceutical company, the way that everything was handled and the way that I saw people suffering, it was just like, this is not, this is not where my story's at. So I had to make a shift, but it was not something that happened like the whim, like it was something that was in my heart for a while.
Yeah, I love that. Interesting that you were in a pharmaceutical. So, what did you do as a nurse? I know this is part of your backstory, so I don't know if you really want to talk about this, but what did
Yeah.
you do as a nurse in a pharmaceutical company?
I worked for one of the largest health insurance companies in America, and I worked as a nurse case manager.
Okay.
So my role was it was kind of like health coaching, but on their terms,
Sure.
on the company's term. Like I had once a patient that was very excited because she's like, I'm going to heal my diabetes and she's going to heal all of this and she's going to get off of these medications. And I was like, nope, you have to tell her she has to take all of this stuff. She has to do all this stuff. But the lady had a really solid plan and I was so giddy for her.
Yeah.
And, that was one of the things also that was like, I want to help people heal, not mask symptoms.
Right.
So my job was to follow up with the patients throughout a 60 or 90-day period every week. We call also it's like health coaching, help them with making sure that they're seeing their doctors correctly, that they're taking their medications, that they're doing any follow-ups that they needed to, and also in the process educating them based on their chronic conditions. Most of them, I worked on a very specific team. It was called a multicultural team where I only had patients that were Hispanic or African American, and so it was like that demographic. And my role was more to provide tons of education and to just help direct them in that way.
Mhm. So interesting. And I think there is such a shift right now in healthcare where people are really starting to realize that there's so much more than just taking a pill. I mean, not everybody, because there's still a lot of people very stuck in that mentality that we just take a pill and it will fix everything. And, I just need to keep going back to my doctor. But there's also a really big, I feel like an awakening, I think is the best word for it, where there's so many people, especially nurses and healthcare providers, that are realizing that there's so much more to this. There's more to healing than just taking a pill. We need to get to the root of why we are having these symptoms, why these things are coming up for us, instead of just, here, take this pill. I'm going to give you this paper that talks about how you should eat, and then send you on your way. And then I'll see you again in, 3 months. Like, that's not the way to heal our body.
Yeah.
So I love that you recognized it and you actually like pursued it, and then you're like, here I am. So tell us what you do now then.
Yes. So now I help mostly women to align with their menstrual cycle. Now, my journey with this work, it's actually a very personal journey for me. So around 4 years ago, I found myself like I had my son, he was almost 2 at this point, and I was going through a very deep kind of like postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, not sure, in hindsight, now I recognize that that's what it was, but I was turning to food for comfort. I was neglecting my health, my mental health. I was neglecting myself. I gained over 50 pounds after having him. And my hormones were so out of whack. Oh my goodness. Like my husband and I would like getting a divorce every month because when my period would come like 5 days to a week before, I would be because I was not aligning with my cycles and I wasn't supporting myself appropriately. So I felt so out of control. So I embarked on this weight loss journey, right? Because that's how it started. It was like, oh, I'm so out of breath. I need to lose some weight. And that evolved into this beautiful journey of like spirituality, self-development, things of that nature. I had like my umpteenth spiritual awakening at that point, and it really opened my eyes to the fact that we are cyclical beings. This is our biology. This is how we're made. The sooner we recognize that and start living with alignment with our natural ebbs and flows of our hormones, the smoother life becomes because we're not meant to go, 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 go. I was very go, 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 hustle, 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 you know, push hard because that's what I was taught. So I actually started tracking my cycle back in my early 20s because I went on this birth control, this injectable hormonal birth control called Depo Provera, and it totally caused so much chaos in my mental health, in my well-being, and everything. And for a year, I was on it and I didn't get my period. And then when I got my period, it was horrid. It was cramped. It was painful. It was all the things. And I decided back then, I was like, I just don't want to put any more chemicals in my body. I was having suicidal ideations. I was having like deep depression where I'll call people telling them I'm doing this, that, all the things. And that wasn't really me. I've always been super resilient. I've gone through a lot of things and I've always been super resilient. So a part of me recognized that that wasn't really me. So I decided to get off of the birth control and I started just tracking, nothing fancy, just like knowing when my period was coming and knowing when I was ovulating, which was easy for me because I have this phenomena where they call it Mittelschmerz, where you actually feel your ovulation as it's happening. So I just recorded when I had my period and when I was ovulating. And I did that for many, 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 many years, but that's all I did. I just gathered data. I just like, that's my form of birth control. And that was it. So when I went through this journey of this weight loss journey and I noticed that, my gosh, now I'm starting to recognize because through my weight loss journey, I started meditating a lot more. I started going inwards a lot because that was my way of cutting that emotional connection that I had with food. So, in my quest and in me going inward, I started noticing all of these patterns because that's how it is, right? Like after you start sitting with yourself and being still and quiet, you start all these things keep popping up and you're like, I didn't even notice that these two things were correlated. And then I started noticing patterns. And then intuitively, I just started like recording certain things, energy levels, like, oh, my energy levels are not always the same. Like sometimes I'm so angry or so irritated and I don't know why. Like there was like, I don't understand. Like I don't want to be mad. Why am I mad? So I started like noticing the patterns and then I started like supporting myself appropriately through these patterns. Around that time, my son and my daughter had a very severe eczema, so I started making them products like lotions and stuff like that. And then I had people tell me like, "Oh my God, this works so good," and I started selling it. And then I opened up an online apothecary, and I got really into herbs, really into like, tinctures and all of these things. So I started experimenting on myself with different tinctures, with different teas. And I'm like, oh, this is very supportive for me during this time, or that's very supportive for me during that time. And then it just kind of evolved. It evolved. And so I started off in my health coaching world and my business as a intermittent fasting health coach because I love intermittent fasting. I'm one of those people I am a very strong advocate for it. It was part of my journey and I wanted to help other moms, implement it into their lives. It was good, but it wasn't as deep as I wanted to get. So that journey evolved to me talking about radical self-care and putting yourself first and filling up your cup and all of that stuff. And then as I was in that space, I noticed that it's not just about the mindset. I'm like, there's a piece that's missing. Why is it so hard for you to prioritize yourself? Like, why is it so hard? And then I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how does it work with me? Like, not every day of the month I feel the same needs. And then like the dots connected and I'm like, oh, this is what it is. Like, we need to start aligning with our cycles. And then here we are today.
Wow. So beautiful. There's so many things that I wanted to like when you're talking, like, okay, let's talk about this, let's talk about this. Okay, so you had gained all this weight. Let's first talk about how did you end up then losing the weight? So you said you went on your weight loss journey. Like, how did that look?
Yeah, so I first went on my weight loss journey. I was desperate because from a very young age, society puts so much pressure on our body image, right? On our weight, on this and that. As a child, I was very abused and it was very hard for me to put on weight. So when I was a young child, it was, you're so skinny, you're too skinny, you're too skinny, like that type of thing. Even though I ate all the time, I ate a lot, like there was no cap. But because I was in survival mode all the time, my body never felt safe enough to, you know, hold on to any kind of weight. Then I remember when I was about 16 years old, I moved in with my mom because I wasn't raised with my biological mom. I moved in with her and, I started feeling a little safer. I started feeling good. I moved to the US. I wasn't actually born or raised here. I moved to the US around that time. And I don't know, I felt maybe safer. Maybe it was the change in food. I started gaining a little weight. And I remember one time my mom was like, look at your arms, you're getting fat like your one aunt or something like that. And I clearly remember that that was what sparked my constant diet mentality situation. Like from then on, I felt like I was always like battling, gaining 10 pounds, losing 10 pounds, like that yo-yo that we go through. And I tried all the things. I've tried all the things. But when I started my weight loss journey after I had my son, I did things like crazy stuff. Like I did Weight Watchers and I would get the little medal that they give you and then I would gain the medal and more. I tried this thing called like bright line eating where you don't eat certain things and I am not an all or nothing type of person. So that did not last very long.
Yeah.
I tried everything and then one day I read this book called The Obesity Code by Dr. Jason Fung, and it like triggered something inside of me. And I was like, this makes so much sense. It resonated with me. So I embarked on a intermittent fasting journey and I released those 50 pounds or so in like 5-ish months 4 years ago
Wow.
and I'm still, I've maintained it pretty much ever since. Things have changed, but because of this journey, that was like the catalyst. But, weight loss is not just a physical thing, it's a mental thing. So because I feel like that started the momentum that really drove everything after that, because then I started getting more into my spirituality, more attuned with myself. And even though routines have changed and evolved over time, like I've never had to worry about it ever again. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I love that. And I actually wanted to talk about intermittent fasting too. So I'm glad that you brought that up in this weight loss part. So I've heard a lot, there's been lots of discussions about fasting and whether fasting is good for you or not. And I know that there's people, especially that do a lot with hormones and adrenals and different things that feel like fasting is just not the way to go. So, can you describe intermittent fasting for people that might not know what that is, that might be curious about it, and how it could even help them?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I see both sides of the coin, right? I understand where they're talking about when we're skipping meals and not taking care of our bodies, not eating enough. It's going to throw our hormones off, okay? So for me, intermittent fasting has to be a very intentional thing. Okay. As human beings, I honestly do not believe that we are meant to be eating. That's my personal opinion, 5 to 6 meals a day. That's not, that's really, it doesn't allow our body a chance to rest, you know,
Yeah.
through eons, ancient times, like our ancestors, they weren't always eating. We had periods of not eating. We had periods of feast. We had periods of where we were just not consuming as much. Of course, now we live in a society where everything is super readily available. Most people don't even have to think about it. You have food in your fridge, you can constantly eat all day long if you'd
Yeah.
like. So when it comes to your hormones, I feel like intermittent fasting was something that really helped me in helping me to balance my hormones because I stopped getting all of those insulin spikes all day long of eating 10 snacks and 3 meals and, all the things that I was doing. Now, does that mean that you don't eat? No, I think that it's important to be intentional with it. Like something as simple as enjoying your last meal, your dinner, etc., maybe 7 o'clock after the sun goes down. Try not to be consuming. Usually around that time, we're mostly consuming empty calories, right? Because
Mhm.
be
The snacks
real,
with that. Yeah. Yeah.
the snacks. So like, reframing from ingesting the foods around, 6, 7, and then in the morning, allowing your body a time to wake up. My first thing when I wake up is I drink some warm water with some apple cider vinegar, a pinch of salt, things like that, to kind of get my digestive system to wake up to to wake up from the night, right? Like before I go consuming stuff and putting things into my stomach. I think that when we allow our gut to rest, it heals. And I'm a very big fan of autophagy because so autophagy is like our body's own self-cleaning mechanism, and it is triggered after we have gone a certain amount of time without eating. Our body
Oh,
goes into self-cleaning mode and
interesting.
it starts to remove toxins, cysts, all kinds of things, the cells get regenerated. All of these awesome things happen triggered by not eating for a certain amount of time. So
Mm,
there are definitely benefits to it.
yeah.
Of course, then when you eat, you're not just because there's a difference between skipping meals and intermittent fasting. Skipping meals is like, I'm not eating for no reason, I'm just not eating, or I'm skipping lunch, or I'm skipping this. And then when I eat, I'm not being intentional to ensure that I'm getting all the nutrients that I need in my meal,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Interesting. What is so when you said that word, and you don't have to say it again. Apophagy? What did you say?
Autophagy.
Autophagy. What is that
Yeah.
time frame? Do you know the time frame that it takes for our body to regenerate?
So for autophagy, there's all kinds of different conflicting timelines and research that has been done around it. Sometimes people say that it could be 18 to 20 hours. There are things that could speed up the process. They say that things like maybe coffee sometimes speeds up the process, exercise speeds up the process. I think this is where being in tune with your own body comes into play, where you're really paying attention to how you're feeling because you get a feeling, right? And this is something that I've learned, you know, we are all different bodies. We
Mm,
have the same kind of biological makeup and stuff, but we all experience stuff differently. So just because autophagy starts at hour 18 for me doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to start at hour 18 for you because you have all kinds of different things happening inside, you know? And then mentally as well, because I feel like I always take a holistic approach to everything. The mind, body, spirit, it's all connected.
yeah.
So we all have different things going on. So it could vary from person to person. But like I said, there's all kinds of research that, you might see that they advocate for 20 hours or for X amount of hours or something like that. So yeah, that's my take on that.
I love that. So, what's your take? Just one more thing on intermittent fasting. What's your take on fasting for, like periods of days? So, like I've done it where it's been, like for 3 days or for 7 days and things like that. Like, do you feel like that's too long of a time then to fast? Obviously, this is your own opinion, and whatever we're saying here is just our opinions, not medical advice. But
Correct, correct. My opinion. So I think that extended fasting for a certain amount of time, 72 hours, 48 hours, et cetera, it's very beneficial when done right because it's a natural detoxing of your body. And like I said, your body goes into autophagy, then it goes into ketosis, and it's all this process that helps your body to heal.
mm,
So for quite some time, I'm going to say like 2 years, I did a 48-hour fast every other week, right? Because it's just something about like the mental clarity, even like a 72
yeah.
hour fast, like you get so laser focused. You feel so amazing,
Mm,
right? You
yeah.
feel like, right? Like, how do you feel when you've done these long fasts? You feel like you can't even believe you feel so good without eating
Right.
stuff, right?
Right. Yeah, I think we hyper focus on food so much here in our culture. Like that's just how we are raised. Everything you do, every gathering you have, it's all focused around food and snacking. Snacking became huge when I was younger for some reason, and we snack here too, which I know is not the best. But yeah, it is. It's like if your mindset is not stuck on food and what you're consuming and what I have to make next and all of that, like yeah, and then also giving yourself, like you said, that rest and digest, and just allowing for it's almost like the brain fog that we have sometimes I've associated with the foods that we eat. And I don't know if that's 100% true or not, but I do feel like when I go for periods of time without eating, that brain fog is lifted. So then it comes to question, well, why don't we do it more often? But yeah, that's a whole nother thing. So
Because it's challenging.
yes, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us more about how you and I wanted to talk about how you were tracking. So you talked about tracking your cycle when you ovulated, when you got your period, even before there was tracking apps, probably. Because I mean, I guess I don't know how long they've been out. I haven't had them as probably as long as they've been out, but it sounds like you were doing your own tracking basically. So I know there's lots of tracking tools and things out there. So do you use those now, or do you do your own tracking, or like how do you do that?
So that's really a good question. When I first started tracking, it was in the notes section of my phone. But and I still to this day actually have it. It's so fun, actually, technology, because no matter what phone you get, you always have all your notes and stuff from years and years. So I could just scroll and see like all the things. But then again, at that point, I was just tracking two factors, right? I was just tracking when I was had my period, and like I really wasn't even tracking the length, none of that. I was just tracking when my period came, when I ovulated, and I was just doing it in the notes section on my phone. Now I like to do bullet journaling, so I do a lot of stuff written out. I also have a digital period tracker that is kind of like a mirror of my bullet journaling practices. And I use that sometimes to make sure that, it's easy to use, user friendly. But usually the way that I track all of my stuff inside of my bullet planner. I do my energy, my mood. Now I know I track like the cycle length. I track when I'm entering the different phases so that I know. So I'll say like LP1, which is like luteal phase day one, and then I'll track like how I feel. And then when I look at it, I have a pretty good like understanding of what's going on so I can recognize the pattern.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so if there's people here that are listening and they're like, I don't even know what luteal phase is. I don't even know how to track. Or maybe they have a tracker on their phone, but they don't really use it. Or they just use it for, okay, this is when I started my period. This is how long it was so that I know when I'm going to get it next. What would you tell the people who are just starting, who don't really know much about any of this?
Yeah, so the importance is to just start, right? The best time for us to start tracking and aligning with our cycle is when we were 12, 11, 9, however else we were when we first started getting our period.
Yeah,
But the next best time is like right now. Just do it, right?
right.
So our menstrual cycle has 4 phases. And the first phase is the menstrual phase, which is when you're actually bleeding. That marks day one of your period. So if you are, let's say that you just got your period today, you would mark on the calendar day one, menstrual phase. Now they have so many different apps that you could download. There's
Yeah.
all kinds of different ones. And I love apps. They make it very simple and very easy, but it's not very intuitive because like I feel like the best tracker is yourself because then
Yeah.
you know exactly what's going on. They
Mhm.
just give you like a synopsis, but things change based on your stress level, your nutrition, traveling, what's happening. So, getting an app is a good first step, but then using it beyond just the app is what I really recommend. So after your menstrual phase, which is the time when your uterus is shedding the uterine lining and you're bleeding, you have your follicular phase. And during your follicular phase, that is like after you stop bleeding, it kind of overlaps a little bit with the menstrual phase, but your hormones are steadily inclining. At this point, you're going to start feeling a little bit more energy. You're going to start feeling a little bit more enthusiastic about the world, I guess. Like, because like your menstrual phase is more of like winter time.
Mhm.
So I might like thinking about it too as like the season. So I'll refer to it like it's the winter. What happens in the winter? It's
Yeah.
snowy. Everybody's in hibernation.
Right. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just you want soups and
Just want
teas.
to
That's
cuddle
it.
in. Yep.
And cuddling, low key vibe. So as you enter your follicular phase, think about it like the springtime, like the flowers start to bloom. You kind of get that into that mindset. Um, After that, we enter into our ovulatory phase, which is peak season. So think about it like summer. What do we do in the summer? We go to all the barbecues, we go to the pool, we're social, we're hanging out. That's literally how you feel during, mostly if your hormones are balanced, you feel during your ovulatory phase. This is the phase where you're like at peak conception, like you, if you're trying to get pregnant, this is the time that you're trying to be very mindful of. You feel super confident. You feel super sexy. A lot of women report having like an extreme sex drive during this time because our bodies are biologically programmed that we're trying to have a baby.
Yeah.
You kind of see when animals go in heat,
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of, kind of that, kind of like that. So think about it as like the summertime. After the summertime, this is peak season, start to get a steady decline. You enter the luteal phase. We're going to call that the fall. It's getting a little more chilly. You're starting to just plan for your winter time,
Mhm.
right? Plan out like, okay, like maybe not taking on more projects, maybe not scheduling a big event, maybe not doing too much. You're starting to wind down. This is literally what happens to us every month.
Yeah.
And then sometimes every month we're like, if you're not in tune, you're like, what's going on?
I can tell you so many times where I'm like, oh gosh, I don't feel so great. Like the day before, like usually the day before I get my period, I get very like emotional, or because I have POTS, I will get a fluctuation in that feeling like, oh gosh, I feel like it might be coming on. And then literally the next day I'll get my period and I'm like, okay, yep, that was it.
Oh,
Why every
yep.
month do I feel like, oh yeah, that's it? Like it's
Yeah.
just, it's so, yeah, it makes so much sense to really track and to be prepared and to know your body, to know what's going on in your body. But I feel like that's another one of those things where we're so busy. We're so busy going and doing, and we don't take the time to really be with ourselves and know our body enough. And so I love that you are talking about this, that you're bringing this to the world, because I feel like it's very needed. And I also feel like it's not something that we talk about a lot. I feel like maybe in certain circles, and maybe now in circles that you're in, you might talk about it a lot more. But growing up, that was never something that we talked about. I mean, got my period. I don't even know if I had talked about it at all. I come from a very private Christian school. And so you didn't talk about the body. You didn't talk about periods. You didn't talk about sex. We didn't talk about any of that, besides that it was bad. So we just weren't prepared. So now I love that we're preparing our girls so much better than we were prepared. And also then educating us as adults who were in those phases where we didn't learn and we felt like it was dirty to talk about, where now we're shedding light and we're like, okay, we can talk about this and we should talk about this and we need to know about our bodies, because not just for tracking purposes to know when you're going to get your period, it's for tracking to know, to understand your body and to understand like what you need, what might be the best. And also, and I know you do some work around this too, but like really working with your cycle, like working around, let's not plan, like you kind of were just talking about, let's not plan really big things during our luteal phase or when we're menstruating. Like let's maybe try to plan those things, when we are feeling great, when we have that energy, when it's like the summertime. So I think it's really, really amazing. I've been hearing more about people really trying to plan and give themselves, if you can, if you're in a job where you have to work every single day of the week, then you can't obviously do that. But trying to plan yourself more so that you can give yourself some breaks during that time where you just have lower energy in general. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you know what? I think that's really good that you brought that up about work and stuff like that. And also about us not being educated. Like my first introduction to my menstrual cycle was not pretty. Like no one really talked to me about it. And this is the trend for a lot of people our ages. Like no one talked about this stuff. No one, and it wasn't talked about in a light of, oh, you're feminine power and all of this
Right.
energy and etc. It's more like you put your pad on, your tampon, etc. And if you have to call out of the gym, it's like, look at her, she's
Yeah.
like missing gym because she got her period.
Yeah.
It's like this connotation of it's something to be shamed about. It's something to feel guilty about if you need to rest.
Mhm.
Now, even as like busy adults that have jobs and stuff like that, it's still important to allow yourself extra space. This doesn't have to be like, oh, I got my period, I'm shut down because, I got
Yeah.
kids,
Right.
I can't shut it down.
Yeah.
But it's about intentionally giving yourself that extra space, even if you have to go to work to your 9 to 5. Like maybe instead of after work going to do all the things, do your shopping, do your things before that phase. So when you go home, you could allow yourself some extra break.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like on your lunch, allowing yourself a 5 minute breather where you are sitting down intentionally going within.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like, I'm not an all or nothing type of person.
Right.
So it doesn't have
Right.
to be like you shut down. I want to be very clear that that's not the message that I want to send, because that could be very turn offy, right? Because
Right.
you're like, I got kids, I got a
Right.
job, like I
Yeah.
can't do a cycle alignment, but
Mm,
you can, no matter what situation or no matter what circumstance you're in.
I love that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really good. So, how do you then, if do most people come to you to get in line with their cycle? Like, is that what you typically see? Is women that are just like trying to figure it out, or how does that work?
So most of the time when women come to me, it's because they're suffering from some kind of period struggle. Because
Mm,
that's what happens, right? We
yeah.
neglect ourselves so far, so long that our body, it's like that alarm clock, right? Like if you keep ignoring your cycle and you keep ignoring your natural cyclic nature, it's only a matter of time. It's like, I want to say alarm, but I'm going to instead use the analogy of like a pressure cooker, you
Mm,
know? It
yeah.
just keeps building pressure, building pressure until poof. And before you know it, you're suffering with things like PCOS. You're suffering with things like
Yeah.
PMDD and PMS and, irregular cycles, heavy, painful cycles, all of the things.
Mm,
So I really truly believe that if we were to start aligning with our cycles from the get go, and of course, this includes things like your nutritional needs. It includes your exercise and your self-care needs. If we started aligning with our cycles from the get-go, it is my true like belief that we will see a lot less of these ailments later on in life. Okay. So my hope and like my intentions for me is like by doing this work, when I get to the phase where I'm going through menopause, it's not going to be as horrible as you hear. I hear a lot of women that are like going through the ringer, right? But it's because they've been ignoring their body's signs and signals for so long. And a lot of times, unless something big happens, and that's how it is as humans, right? We don't generate change unless something big happens.
yeah.
Like a lot of times we need some kind of traumatic event to happen for us to say, oh gosh, I need to change this way of being or this way of living,
Yeah.
right? It could be a death, it could be loss of a job, it could be whatever it is. In this, it could be like an illness, it could be like, a disorder or something like that. Then we want to make the change because we don't feel like it's super important
It's
because society tells us that it's not,
Gosh, that is
right?
so good. Yes. So that leads into another question that I had. So if you have, because there are so many people that are struggling with PCOS or periods that are so irregular, all over the place, or bleeding, 10 days out of 20 days. There's so many different things that are going on. So if someone comes to you like that, I don't know how to even regulate because I'm bleeding all the time or I'm having all these issues, like how do you help them?
Yeah. So for me, and I actually have a client that I'm working with right now in terms of her hormonal health. I think that the first step is always to gather the data. Okay. So just like this didn't happen one day to the
Mhm.
next, it's not going to get fixed one day to the next. There has to be a process in place in order to provide sustainable results. So my first thing is always tracking pattern recognition. Let's gather the data. Let's see what's going on over a period of time to see where you need to pay the most attention to, where areas. I am a very big advocate of plant medicine, of herbal supplements, of herbal remedies. So I always recommend supporting your bodies through different herbal stuff. And I truly believe that food is medicine. So supporting your body through your nutrition, and then I also believe that our minds are so powerful and thoughts become things. So working on what we believe, or what our belief systems are around our cycle. If you're like, oh, I can't stand my cycle, I hate my period, your body feels that and
Yeah.
it's going to give you something to hate and
Yeah.
something to not like. So, working on these like nutrition and Even exercise too is so important. The way that we exercise and the way that we move our body during each phase of our cycle, all of these things together is what helps us to have a balanced hormonal experience and for our periods to be regulated. It's
Mhm.
not just one thing
Yeah.
that's going to solve the problem.
Right.
I don't believe in quick fixes, you know? I know a lot of doctors, they recommend soon as you have like any kind of issue, it's like, oh, we're going to give you this birth control pill and this is going to regulate your hormones and this is going to help you to this and that. And it's not, it's actually not.
That's a great segue into what my other next question was, is birth control, because I know, especially for anybody on in having issues with their periods and their cycles and things, like you said, birth control is the first line of, and I even knew that. So my daughter is 18, and I don't want to share too much about without like her, but it was right away. Like we went in and they're like, you need to be on birth control. Like that's what you need to do. And so we sat and we had a long conversation because I didn't really know how to help her at the time. I was like, I don't really know exactly what you need. She was having really painful period. Like we would almost pass out, like would get white as a ghost. And there was a couple times I had to go pick her up physically because she couldn't drive. She was having so much pain. And so they put her on birth control. And but we talked about it. I'm like, I don't know that this, I don't want you to be on this. I know this isn't great, but I don't really know how else to help you. And so for anybody else out there who is like, okay, I'm the same, I'm on birth control, I don't want to be on it, but I don't want to go back to bleeding all the time. I don't want to go back to having terrible, painful periods where I can't, literally can't stand it. I don't want to go back to whatever they were suffering with or struggling with. How do we help people that are in that situation? They're like, I don't know what else to do. Like this is what they told me to do, and I don't know where to go from here.
Yeah. So I think that, having that conversation with your doctors because there are different types of birth control. So, as a nurse, I don't accustom to say, get off the medication, that's
Right.
it. You want to have a plan in place, right? So the first thing is you can start aligning with your cycle even if you are on birth control, okay? Because you still go through all of these phases, different ways, but you still can go through all of these phases. So tracking, recognizing the patterns, starting with the herbal types of support, nutritional. Food is a really big factor in our hormone imbalance as a society, really, because a lot of the foods that we eat are not meant to keep us healthy. It's
Right.
not meant to, help us to be strong. So if we pay attention to the foods that we're eating, start noticing what our triggers are, which is something that I actually learned through this process. Like, I learned that dairy is not my friend. It's really inflammatory for me. Some people could process dairy very well. Gluten is another thing. Like, I have to be super careful because it just doesn't do well for me. So recognizing what is your triggers, what's causing some of these issues, because birth control ultimately it's just a band-aid. If you were to just stop taking it, it's more than likely that all of the issues will return. However, it's not really something that you want to be on forever. If I'm not mistaken, a lot of these birth control things have in their inserts not to exceed taking for this amount of years or this amount of time. They don't tell you that, and you're on it forever. As a nurse, I've seen people on medications that are only supposed to be an 8-week thing for 2 years. And
Yeah.
what kind of chaos is that wreaking on your body? So I think that, just becoming more intentional with the way that you are treating yourself, start tracking, start aligning as best as you can. Have that conversation with your doctor about the different types of birth control that there is and what you're on, and maybe decreasing the dosage, decreasing the power, the effectiveness of it over time, and, keeping track of your hormonal levels. A lot of these doctors put these women on birth control and they don't check their hormonal panel. So it's like, this isn't going to solve the problem. So that would be my recommendation personally.
Yeah, it's so true because, and even just knowing, using my daughters like this and as an example, and sorry, Aubrey, if you're watching this, they never They never checked any hormone levels, and I've never had hormone levels checked. I was on birth control for only for a year, but still, I don't ever remember having anything like that checked. So that's so interesting. And you would think that would be a really big thing to know your hormone levels first before you even start it. Like that would be a
Yep.
huge thing. So I think that's such a disservice that we are doing. And also because when young girl, like that's one of the biggest things too. And I had a conversation with a friend too whose son is with this girl, and she's like, well, I hope she's on birth control. Like that's the first thing that we think about is, like I don't want them to get pregnant at a young age, so let's just put them on birth control because we'd rather prevent pregnancy in our young girls. And so, which I think is just a terrible mentality. And I remember when she said it thinking, well, that's not your choice for her to be on birth control, that's not your choice. But I know that as a mom of teenagers as well, that's always a huge thing that you think about. Okay, how do we help them to prevent? So it's like for people also that are thinking like, well, gosh, they have to be on it because what's going to happen otherwise? I don't even know what's the best advice that you can give for that.
Yeah, so my thinking when it comes to that personally, I feel like education is of the utmost importance. I think that we underestimate, especially in this generation now, we are coming up, this younger generation, they're more in tune. I guess like their awareness is a lot bigger, I guess, than we were when we were at those ages. So I think that we underestimate their own power in themselves to educate themselves and really follow through. Because you know what? Like birth control is a class one carcinogen. Understanding the risk and what this could entail for future you could be a very good landing point to say like, oh, you know what? Maybe I want to learn about how to align with my cycle and use natural family planning. And then there are herbs and different, ways that we could prevent pregnancies. There's condoms and there's spermicides and there's different herbs that you could use that, could definitely prevent without going into a systematic medication that is going to cause you to have cancer down the road. I have a friend that actually confided in me the other day. She's like, I was on this and that birth control for 5 to 7 years, and she had thyroid cancer that was growing for 5 to 7 years. She's like, I don't think that was a coincidence.
Yeah. Might give me goosebumps.
So, like it's just, and obviously everyone has to make their own choice, but I have a daughter. And for me, my intention is to teach her about these things from the go. Like she already knows, like, cause she's hearing me talk about it all the time. And I'm like very intentional because I know a lot of moms that don't even like their kids like 10 and they don't know what a period is because they've never had this discussion. I feel like this is something that needs to be normalized as soon as possible so that when it comes to that time, they're already, it's not like a new topic, like, oh, what? A period? I'm bleeding? What's happening? Like education is really important.
100%. Gosh, I feel like we could talk for like hours on this
Yeah.
subject because there's just so much here. I just love what you're doing with this work, and I love that you're bringing light to it. I love that you are talking about it so much. I love that it is becoming more of a conversation and that it is becoming, we're just bringing more awareness to the population because things like we were just talking about with the birth control and all the stuff that we just weren't educated on. And especially because you go to the doctor and they put you on birth control and it's just like, I don't even know. There's so many different kinds and they just throw you on something. They don't even tell you what it is. They don't even discuss what kind you want or anything like that. It's just like, here you go, just take it. And then the
I have I
crazy part is you don't even have to pay for it. It's free. So
I have my
that's what's
thoughts on
crazy to
that.
me.
I'm like, like working as a nurse in this industry, I know pharmaceutical reps and they usually just put you on the one that they're getting the best kickback on, the one that they're getting the most compensation, you know how it is with the meds. Like that's literally how this healthcare system here operates. I
Yes.
worked as a nurse in home care and I saw some really gnarly things and, you know, spoke with doctors and like all I'm saying is like if your doctor says something, I recommend you go research it, get a few different opinions, and then go somewhere else and get several opinions because doctors aren't the be all end all. They don't know your body, and doctors are practicing just like, they're practicing medicine. They don't know everything. They have their own Google database that they go to and put your symptoms and, based on what their office, what contract they have with what pharmaceutical company, that's what they're going to put you on. And that's what they're going to recommend and push. And this is exactly what you need. And I'm not against allopathic medicine because there's a place for it. I don't want to come off like, oh my gosh, like I've just had so much experience with a lot of different doctors. I know the way they think. I see the way they think. I've lived it. This wasn't like hearsay. Somebody told me. This is a lot of, I have like stories that you're like, what? The doctor said what? And I'm like, yeah, the doctor said this. So, forgive me for being a little like, make sure you get several opinions after they say anything to you.
I'm right there with you because I feel like we do put doctors up on a pedestal. Like, yes, they go to a lot of schooling, they do have a lot of knowledge, but they also are taught to be very cookie cutter. Like, this is what we do for this. It's always
Yes.
you come in with a sore throat and whatever, we're going to check the boxes down. We're going to give you this antibiotic. If you come in with an earache and blah, blah, we're going to do X, Y, Z. And it's just like they literally have these templates, these things that have worked for the 50 people before you. So we're just going to do this for you. And while it is good for some things and we need medicine 100%,
Yes.
it's also like you're saying, do your research and really learn your body, know yourself, and know what works for you. Because, and I've talked about this on another podcast, like doctors are not taught nutrition. It is not something that they go to school, like they don't learn that in there. They're taught to give you medicine. They are taught medicine, they're taught to provide you pills, and like you're talking about with the pharmaceuticals. And I feel like we're going to go down a rabbit hole here, but it's like, just doing your research, I think is what we're both trying to say here is like,
Yes.
know your body, know what you need, do your research, because while yes, they are amazing practitioners and people, you know your body the best, you know what you need. If you really, like we talked about in the beginning, if you slow down and listen to your body's wisdom,
Mm,
your body can speak to you. So we just need to take that
yeah.
time, which we don't do. We want that quick fix. And so I think what our society needs a little bit more of is this patience to be with ourselves, with our thoughts, with our body, with different things instead of like, I need something now. Like we're just so focused on the I need a quick fix. I need to go to the doctor so I can get something so it's done in a day and I don't have to worry about it anymore. And sometimes that's
Yeah.
not, we need deeper. We need to go deeper. I think that's like the big point that I'm trying to make here. So, yeah.
Yes. Yes. I actually read this book. It's called The Healing Self. I don't know if you read that. I think it was by Deepak Chopra, and he goes into how, our bodies are so intelligent. We're always looking outwards for the answers when the answers already reside here.
Yes.
And it's hard though because society doesn't raise us to be in this way, right? Like from a time, even when we're children, like we're telling our kids what to do. We're telling them how to think, how to feel, how to, if they're crying, shh. Like, we kind of set this up
Yeah.
that way. So of course, that's why, you grow up and then you feel like that person over there is going to have the answer to what's going on with me. And even though our bodies are so intelligent and they tell us things, we are not listening because we don't know how to listen and we don't trust our gut because we've been conditioned so long to listen to the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a vicious cycle, really.
Yeah, like your elders know best. This person, your doctor, your pastor, your teacher, your parents, everybody knows better than you know. And so you don't listen to yourself, you outsource. And so it's like if you give your power away. We give our
Yes.
power away so much by listening to so many other people. We ask everybody else for their opinions because we don't trust our own. And so if you take something away from this episode, just know that you have the answers inside you. Really, truly, just learn to listen to your body, learn to trust yourself because you do truly know best for yourself and for your kids. This has been so good. Such a great conversation. Is there anything that you would like to share that you haven't shared where you're like, gosh, I want to talk about this or I want to share this, or is there anything you'd like to say?
Well, just to piggyback on what you're saying about listening to yourself, like, be kind with yourself through this process because after so many years of following the same pattern, it's not going to be easy to just automatically start listening to yourself, right? Like, oh, today I'm going to start listening to myself. That's it. Like, it's going to be some ups and downs. You're going to maybe make a mistake. You might think that you feel this way, but it's not. But what I've learned is that the more you practice and even doing like exercises where you're doing like intuition types of practices where you're asking yourself yes or no questions to see where you feel it in your body, like just doing like little things like that consistently over time, those voices and those nudges will start to get louder. So, don't feel like just because you're like, well, I don't even know where to start listening to myself. What does that even mean? It's going to be a journey. Like we didn't just learn all of these things overnight. We literally have been learning it for a lifetime. So just have patience and grace with yourself as you embark through these journeys.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that because that's so true. So true. And so, where can people find you? How can people, if people are like, oh my gosh, I want to work with you because like having and something I did want to caveat before we like close this was, you can have all the tracking apps in the world, you can have all the things, and I think we talked about this on one of the calls that we were on because we're in a space together, and so having all the tracking apps, having all those things are super, super important, but also having that accountability to be like, okay, what do I do with this now? How do I go forward? How do I move forward? How can I help myself in the best way possible? So if someone here is like, gosh, I want to know more, I want to do more, I want to work with you or work on how to figure this out, like how do people find you and work with you?
So I have my intuitive flow program that I have designed to help to guide you to connect deeper with each phase of your cycle, give you like a solid framework so that you could understand your body's needs, and then breaking it down so that it's in bite-sized pieces, bites and doable because like you said, we know what we should do. A lot of women, it's not like they don't know. It's just that they know, but they don't really know. It's not in your body yet, right? So in this program, along with the tactical tools and the strategies and the tangible stuff, we also really go deep into our body through breath work, through EFT tapping, through meditation, to really get us anchored into this cyclical being self, because it's hard to reprogram from all of these things that we have been patterned to do from a very young age. So inside of this program, my intention is to not only teach you the tools so that you know, but also that you really, really know, like a deep knowing. And then once you have that deep knowing, if you're anything like me, once you understand something on that deeper level, it's not so much like, oh, I need motivation, I need some kind of external factor. It just comes from within. Now you're interested in aligning because you know how you're going to feel on the other side. You know how good it is for your body. So that is my intention with this 6 week program. And we're actually starting a beta program. This is my first round of doing this, and it's going to start on November 6th. So I want to invite you, if you're listening and you're wanting to explore deeper into this topic, to come and join in on the program. I also have a free group on Facebook. It's called The Bloody Truth, Peer Talk and Support. So come on over and join. I put a lot of value into this group. A lot of education is in this group. And of course, then we have the community and the sisterhood aspect of it. So yeah.
Make
And I'm also on Instagram.
Yes, yes. I'll make sure to put all the links here below too so that people can find you and check everything out. This probably won't come out until December sometime.
Oh,
So,
no.
but you might be close to like a next 6 week kind of thing if you do. I don't know how often you do
Correct.
them, but yeah, so we'll make sure to put all the info in there though so that people can look it up. And yeah, so thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for this
Thank
conversation.
you.
So great, so needed. I just love the work that you are doing. Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate you.
All right, until next time. Oh, thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you loved listening as much as I loved recording. Each and every conversation that I have here on this podcast just lights my soul on fire. I love having conversations where we explore and challenge our ways of thinking. So if you've resonated with anything here and you're looking for more, please connect with me on Facebook in my Soul Deep community group, which is free. I'm also offering all my listeners a free month in my Soul Deep Connection membership. I have poured my heart and soul into this membership, bringing you resources to help you grow into the best and truest version of yourself. I've used my knowledge and experience as a nurse, combined with my knowledge and experience as a coach, breathwork facilitator, and somatic embodiment guide. This library consists of breathwork, kriyas, and other resources and modalities that will help you learn about and give you the healing tools to live the life you've been dreaming about, and to help you find your true passion and zest for life again. This library of resources is vital for everyday maintenance. And on top of the library of resources, there are live monthly calls, ranging from breathwork, kundalini, full moon or new moon circles, as well as guest speakers on a variety of different topics, from decluttering to marketing to sisterhood and all things healing and wellness. So make sure you join today to get you back on track to living that thriving life that you are longing for. Remember, the first month is free, and my hope is that you find so much value that staying is an absolute no-brainer. It really is everything that I was looking for as I started my journey, and so much more. I truly hope to see you inside my community. And if you haven't yet, please follow me here and on social. Like and subscribe, and make sure to share your favorite episode with your friends and community. And when you do, make sure to tag me in that post. If you tag me, you'll be entered into a drawing for that month where you can win a free one-to-one session, breathwork or coaching session with me. All the links will be in the show notes here below. Until next time, Soul Deep fam, and in the words of my dear friend Mary Lacey Banks, I'm holding you so tight in a thought hug.